Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Bob.
A little weird delay there.
We need to get better at these because I think for the last N number of episodes, it's like, hey, Bob. Hey, Kevin. I don't know. Maybe we need pyrotechnics. Oh, you know what I asked you for last? Because breaking news, we have our own editor, if you will. And
I'm calling him editor producer.
Well, I asked for the audio version of pyrotechnics, and I don't even know what that means, but maybe we should start the show with that.
We'll get, I'll, since now it's in the audio, Josh will hear it, and then I can say that I've asked Josh what audio pyrotechnics are. So,
yeah, because,
so that is definitely,
when you want to get people jazzed on some visual, you just throw it at them and just blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what the audio version of that is, but.
Are we an audio pyrotechnics kind of show though?
I have no idea what that even means. I'm just saying we got to do better than hi, Bob. Hi, Kevin.
Well, I do it because we never really say who we are. I mean, yeah, the intro gets dropped in and we go through that, but sometimes that comes in late. I've actually heard that Josh wants us to keep it up front, so who knows when he'll drop it in, but we'll see.
Makes me wonder if there's a standard podcast formula that this is the plan, or when you put in all that stuff, can you only put the intro N number of minutes or seconds in, I want to know.
Well, remember when we first started doing this, we opened the show. We didn't do any banter. It was just you're listening. And then we decided that we would try a cold open. And then some episodes we were 35 minutes in, and then it'd be the intro.
But that's okay, right?
I don't know. So that's why we've hired an editor producer to help us get better at that kind of stuff.
You are listening to the Bob and Kevin Show with Bob Beattybar and Kevin Gaszewski. Each week we cover relevant tech and social issues related to technology.
Our website is bobandkevin.show.
And our episodes can be found virtually on any podcast network.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Just search for Bob and Kevin Show.
Hey, did we mention, we're going to pat ourselves on the back here. Did we mention the fact that we were in Podcast Magazine?
That is actually on my show notes list. Very well done.
Thanks.
Remember, we don't rehearse these. But yes, no, we haven't mentioned it on an episode, but we are actually right now currently in the August edition of Podcast Magazine as the featured tech podcast.
And allegedly this Podcast Magazine is a print magazine, as well as digital, right?
Yeah, I got to actually get back to Laura because I didn't really understand her email about the printed copies. So we might have to arm wrestle to see who gets the free one and who has to pay for the one.
Yeah. Anyway, I'd be pretty interested to ever see our podcast in print, though it is definitely in digital on Podcast Magazine's digital downloads. So that's awesome. Yes. And thank you to Laura and the Podcast Magazine for interviewing us. So it was great.
If you read the article, this would be good to get some listener feedback. If you read the article, apparently we slant toward comedy as a tech flavor, if comedy and tech are flavors. So it'd be great to get some feedback on that. And speaking of feedback, I heard that we're actually supposed to humbly request reviews and stars on formats like Apple Podcasts and places like that where you'd find finer podcasts like the Bob and Kevin Show, because we're on all of them. And some reviews and some ratings, that'd be pretty cool.
So you're saying we're on Apple Podcasts, right?
We are.
We're not in the App Store, are we? We're not in the App Store.
No, because then we'd have to be required to have in-podcast purchases, and we don't have any purchases.
Who else isn't on the Apple Pod or the store? Epic. I just saw the headlines come out that Apple finally make good on their threat, and they've revoked all of Epic's stuff. I
did hear though that the the rendering engine part of that did go to court, and they have put a cease and desist on them blocking the game engine.
Like
so
injunction.
Other companies that are using, injunction. Thank you. Big word alert. But yeah, so that part at least stayed, but apparently Epic is out.
Makes you wonder. I mean, obviously they want to be in the App Store. Anyway, I don't want to make this episode about Epic. I'm going to stop right there. If you'd like to learn more about Epic and all that, listen to our last podcast, wherever, as Bob would say, finer podcasts are found.
And that would be episode 76 for those of you keeping score.
Oh man, we're closing in on 100. I don't know. Should we have a celebration at 100?
We definitely should have a celebration at 100.
Give away stickers.
I don't know what that celebration.
Give away stickers or something. In fact, you can have a sticker right now. You don't have to wait till you get to 100. All you have to do is get a hold of me or Bob, preferably me, because I've already said I'll send them free postage paid anywhere in the world, and it's like $1 to send to Australia. That'll come out of this guy's pocket right here, the one talking. If you want one, and if you're in Australia, or if you're in Indiana, or if you're in Colorado, or if you're in that one place and where Disney World's at, Florida, California, you name it. Right?
we ship to the entire contiguous world.
That's right. we will not ship to Mars yet.
Dime.
Logistics are a little more difficult, so we'll get there.
We are on the waiting list with Elon to ship stickers to Mars, though.
For real, though, if you want some stickers, and I've got some coasters, I'll even try to get you a coaster. Well, oh wait, Bob, if
Kevin,
somebody
do you
wants
have refrigerator magnets?
Oh yeah, I got those too. You've got all this stuff too, right? We've got to unload some of this swag because I don't need a pile of magnets, stickers, and coasters. So if you'd like a Bob and Kevin Show fun pack, how should somebody get a hold of us, Bob?
Damn it, I was going to ask you that question. You should reach out to us on Twitter.
Yes.
Twitter/Bob and Kevin Show. And you'll find us there. The DMs are open, as the kids say, or you can just add us and we'll figure out a way to get you the stickers.
Yeah, I think
or the fun pack.
Sending us a direct message with, hey, your show sucks, or hey, your show's great. Either one will work as long as we get an address. We'll probably send you something. So I think that'd be great.
Here's one that doesn't work. Don't send us a direct message about the betting line on one of the next NBA games, because we got one of those earlier this week too. So
did we?
Yes, we did.
I definitely don't keep track of the show email. I should probably keep track of the show mentions, but as long as you got that covered, we're good.
Yeah, and once I remember what our email address is, I'll look at that again. So Kevin.
Yes.
I have 2 topics slated for today's episode. I will let you pick 1 or 2, and we could start there.
Like topic number 1 or topic number 2.
Yeah, it's kind of like what's behind door number 1.
Yeah, but this is like a magic trick, because if I'm holding, 2 things that pick a hand, does that mean we're gonna pick go with the one you picked, or is that the one you're gonna take away? So I don't know if
Damn it, you know me too well.
So
yeah, this is basically just a ruse.
Okay, in the spirit of whatever, let's go with number 2, Bob.
Radio magic.
Right.
You're going to go with number 2?
Number 2.
Oh, great. Because number 2 is something that's near and dear to all of our hearts in this work from home era. That is the topic of Zoom fatigue.
Oh,
what that tired. Is, and are we experiencing it? Is it real? Or is it, like cancel culture? Episode 75 for record.
Well, like any good topic, Bob, can you define Zoom fatigue for the average listener, and maybe me too?
The thoughts and opinions of Bob and Kevin
of the Bob and Kevin Show are exclusively the thoughts of
Bob and Kevin, and not the thoughts of their employers.
Past, present, and probably not future. So it's funny. Zoom fatigue, the concept of that actually came out. It's actually something that came out before the work from home era, because video conferencing became popular well before we were all sent to work remotely. But before we get into Zoom fatigue, I find it funny that categorical name, Zoom fatigue, actually applies to Teams meetings, applies to, Google Meet, Google Hangouts, whatever they're calling it these days. So all those video conferencing utilities that can be used for both personal and professional use. So
Side
since
note,
we're talking about work.
Does Google Meet make you hungry? Because unless you know how it's spelled, you may think it's like some market. So I'm just saying. All right, continue.
Yes, because Amazon got into Whole Foods, so there you go. Google's now doing animal meat products.
Now, when you
that's
think
not
of
true.
Google Meet, you're gonna be like, steak. Why do I think steak? You're welcome, Bob. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. So anyway, what I was saying is that the funny thing is that Zoom is basically the Kleenex of video conferencing.
Explain.
Yeah. So every facial tissue is called Kleenex, whether it's Kleenex brand or not, right?
Right.
Kind of like
you're
Xerox
saying
became the copying machine.
Like rollerblades, I think they lost their trademark because everyone started calling inline skates rollerblades, and Band-Aid, you can't just call it Band-Aids anymore. They're Band-Aid brand because they're trying to retain that trademark. Got it.
Yes. So yes, Zoom is as the Kleenex of video conferencing tools. I don't know where I was going with that. I just think it's funny that, no matter what the conferencing tool is, it's Zoom. Zoom fatigue is the coined phrase. Another tangential thing that, of course, we do all the time. Do you utilize Zoom as a work communication tool?
Yeah, and I'll keep it light. So I've recently transitioned employers, and I'm going from a Google Hangout environment to a Zoom environment.
We are also a dual environment, Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Do your kids use Zoom for remote learning?
They do, but they haven't actually experienced remote learning since the end of last school year in the spring. So we haven't done it yet. So I'm assuming it's going to be Zoom again.
So I only have one child left in school. She attends university here in Colorado, and they use Zoom as their e-learning platform. She's in a hybrid situation at school. She's living at school. She only has one class that meets in person. And funnily enough, it's a weightlifting class. So I don't know how they would do that as a remote learning class anyway. But the first day of classes were Monday this week. And do you know what happened Monday this week in the world of Zoom communications?
Yes. So you're going to expose the fact that I'm a big liar. I said I went to a Zoom environment because Zoom was down on Monday. I've actually been working off Hangouts most of the week.
So you have not transitioned back to Zoom, even though that was just a temporary hiccup?
We had an all hands today. We had about 60 faces in one Zoom, which I don't even know if Hangouts can do that, but that's what happened. So it's working now.
Yeah. We use Zoom for our bigger meetings. I've been on where people have been pushed all the way back to screen 6.
Side note real quick. So, I mean, back in the day, you had like WebEx, you've got all these different, go to meetings, I don't know. There's a bunch of different video conferences, but at what point did the world move away from Skype and to Zoom? And, it's just like all of a sudden, Zoom is everywhere. And it just like felt like it happened overnight. You and I have used Zoom a lot, but I think, how did we get to Zoom? Where did that come from?
So I think it was probably a perfect storm, because when Zoom came out, which was quite some time ago now, it really wasn't a very popular choice platform. It was kind of an also ran. And so Skype, I feel like Skype and Google Hangouts, or whatever Google was calling theirs at the time, those were kind of the two main ones. And right about the same time that this giant work from home era started to transition, even slightly before, Microsoft was moving away from the Skype brand and working on their new Office 365 integration with Teams. And I think the fact that that didn't have a lot of traction really helped make Zoom a viable alternative for large scale meetings. And I think the fact that you mentioned earlier, you didn't know if Teams could even, not Teams, Hangouts could even handle that capacity of a call. They probably weren't even looked at for that. Even if you were a Google shop, they probably went outside for their larger meetings, and Zoom was there waiting with open arms.
So you mentioned Teams. I've used Teams a little bit. I can't stand Teams. I'm so a Slack person. What do you think of Teams?
Yeah, that's a tough one. We, as a team, that's one of that might be the actual biggest thing that I hate about Teams is its name. Because you set up a Teams team or a Teams channel, but anyway, can I call you on Teams? I just don't like it.
Microsoft can't name because Bing. Who likes Bing? Hey, you want to Bing that? No, I don't want to Bing it. If I Bing it, I'll still Google it. If you know what I mean, I'll use Bing to Google. If that makes any sense.
Google is the Kleenex of searching now.
Exactly. Lowercase G, Google, not uppercase G.
Right. Sorry, your question was Teams.
Yes.
What about it? What was the question?
So I don't know if I have a question. I'm just going to make comments here. So,
Teams versus Slack. That's what it was.
Teams versus Slack. So Teams has got built-in video. Slack's got built-in video, but I hate both of them, to be honest. If I'm going to do a video conference, I actually love Slack, but I'll refrain from calling somebody directly on Slack because I don't even know if you can do more than just one-to-one on Slack. Teams, you definitely can. But isn't it funny how Zoom and Hangouts are still kind of like the big dogs, if you will, and their chat portion of those two apps are absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why we're on both. I think we use Slack for the team communication, typewritten communication to get it out of email, and then we use Teams specifically for video communication. Now we are trying to set up channels where there is ongoing project communication, but it's still not there. They actually have an Asana clone that they're working on too called Microsoft Planner, I believe. And it's still very much in its infancy, but I do like the aspect that I do like about Teams is the integration with all those other tools. So you basically, OneDrive, SharePoint, Project Planner, like all that is integrated basically can be integrated in one UI. I think what I find with software that tries to be that ambitious is that unfortunately not any singular part of that platform is actually very strong. So that's my biggest challenge.
So to bring it back to Zoom fatigue. So I just want to kind of break down the definition there. Basically, are we getting weary of having to do video conferencing, all the things, right?
Yes. So remember before work from home, I don't know about you, I had a lot more phone calls. Like people would call my work phone. I don't get any calls on my work phone now.
Well,
so did you have video conferencing even before this work from home surge?
Yes. And it inspired a single cell comic that I did. And what I did is I drew a person inside of a snow globe. And they were interacting with people on the outside, and they put, imagine it's me. I'm putting my hands on the snow globe and thinking the only way I can communicate outside this globe is through video conferencing. That's kind of what it felt like for me for a while. This is what remote workers are. Everyone's getting to have fun outside the snow globe, but here I'm trapped in my snow globe. I can't interact directly with you. I'm in my little bubble here. Now what? We're all in snow globes, just distributed everywhere. And now everyone kind of feels kind of what a remote worker has endured. But I'm starting to feel like this is like a not normal work from home feeling anymore. I feel like this is like a really strange new normal. I mean, we've normalized working from home. It's almost weird now to go from, we don't work from home, we don't allow that, to, wow, you work at the office? Whoa. And that happened in the span of less than 6 months. It's just like, wow.
It happened in the span of 3 months, 3 weeks.
So I was actually interviewed with a group of people last night at our church. We received a grant from somewhere, and I feel terrible for not knowing the name of the organization. Anyway, we got a grant from them, and then they asked us, what positive things have come out of the pandemic? And the thing we mentioned was, we were able to pull together a live stream because it was really the survival of the church, if not, because nobody can come here. And if you want to get a message out, this is what's going to happen. So I'm looking at the whole work from home thing as a positive that came out of the pandemic so far. Hey, look, it took a pandemic to show everybody a proof of concept that we can all just work wherever you exist.
Yes.
And that's so awesome.
Yeah. The breakdown of the belief that you have to be inside the four walls that the company owns to be productive. I do really definitely appreciate that. But do you think, okay, so this kind of bridges to a different thing. Do you think you and I'll answer this question for me separately though. Do you think you or I are less susceptible to the concept of Zoom fatigue? Basically, it's, being on camera all the time. Do you think because we're remote, we had more of an immunity built up to that?
I think we're definitely battle tested for it. However, it's awkward interacting with somebody who's not used to it. But I think it's people are quick studies. It's not like a really long learning curve. This is how you work from home, but some people are uncomfortable and need interaction. So one thing that I noticed was, even though I was a remote worker, nothing changed for me. When everyone else started working from home, what was really weird is I felt even more disconnected somehow, some strange way. I'm like, wait a second, how do I feel more disconnected, even though they're now technically more accessible? And I think to answer your facial expression you're giving me, and I think the reason is because the people on the other side don't know how to express themselves very well yet through this medium.
Wow. So my experience was completely opposite. And I was going to get to this later in the conversation too. So when our fairly large team became a remote workforce, everyone knew that I had been doing this for a very long time. And so in the beginning, it was like, hey, we can ping Bob and ask, like for tool sets, or not even ask for tool sets, but just like, well, Bob's used to being at home all the time. So I felt like I had a lot of initial communications just based on that. But then it just became a normal practice for something that could have been a text conversation. Hey, is it okay if I just call you on Teams? Which only for a very brief time meant an audio call. It that lasted less than a week, I think. And then everything was video all the time, every time, all the time. Hey, let's just jump on a quick Teams call. And I think you and I are very familiar with the concept, and I think any developers that listen to the show, of context switching. So that makes development incredibly challenging. It makes writing incredibly challenging. So when you're trying to get into flow and there's not a meeting scheduled, and someone is like, hey, I have this thing that I'd really like to bounce off of you. Can we do a quick call? And I don't think I've said no to any of those, which that's on me for not having boundaries. But that's exhausting.
Let me give you some just different perspective. So oftentimes I need to engage person X. How do I engage them? I could send them an email, and I'm going to shake my head. No, I'm not going to send them an internal email. No. I could ping them on Slack. I could put an appointment on their calendar. But if it's a trivial thing, you start running down this, what's the best way to do it? So what I've settled on is I will ping somebody through a direct message typically and just ask them if I can ask them a question. And a lot of times I'll get the answer, sure. But oftentimes I'll get, hey, how about at 9:00? Or, hey, you want to schedule a get together on that? Because they kind of get an idea that's going to be a little longer discussion. So, and then I'm in a new job, and so I'm not sure what protocols are and whatnot. And so I'm kind of in that, I have lots of questions, but I know that every time I ping somebody, I'm interrupting them. And
right.
I think at the end of the day, the person who receives a message has a few responsibilities. They have to eventually acknowledge the message. They are not obligated to acknowledge it right away. And then they are absolutely at liberty to say, no, not right now. I'm in the middle of something. How about we schedule something for X? Yeah, and pick a time. And the whole idea of a quick call, you can certainly ask, but I think it's totally within reason to say, no, I can't right now. I'm in the middle of something.
I think in an environment where there's a net zero power dynamic, so like colleague to colleague, I think you can have those types of communications. But, shortly after this work from home thing kicked in, you saw articles cropping up about what is the proper video call etiquette, and it's kind of similar to what you said. well, yes, but ping the person first and say, are you available? Do you have a couple seconds, whatever, and then get their consent to establish a video call or any kind of communication. But then there's always that person who is just like, oh, I need to call Bob. And then they just click the video button. And then all of a sudden your Teams is ringing.
I've actually never had that happen.
See,
so it might be a cultural thing.
It's definitely, I think it's cultural. I think it's size, company size. And I think it is structural dynamic as well. Because to be fair, sometimes that would happen pre-pandemic where my phone would just ring without but with the phone, I feel like, I don't know. See, and this is that weird thing.
It can go to voicemail.
Yeah, it could, but also Teams can as well. Okay. But I feel like in this environment, there's a compelling to pick up. And this could be me with my personal boundary issues, 100%. But I think some of the things that I'm reading about Zoom fatigue, I'm not the only person that experiences that.
I think it's unreasonable. And because Zoom, I think we have to deliberately both join the meeting. Same with Hangouts. You can call somebody, but it's kind of like not the norm. But on Teams or Slack, you can say, hit the phone icon and it'll just dial. And I think that is poor form for somebody to just hit that without a preemptive, hey, mind if I give you a call first? Because the answer could really be no. Hey, I'm doing something. Hey, I'm in a meeting. Hey, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. Now is not good. That's just my opinion.
And it would probably be better for me if I established a work habit of changing my status when I'm in focus time, but those windows are so tight for me to add a step to change my status to say not available. Yeah. Could be the thing that trips me right back, into context switch mode. So I often don't set that status so people will see me as green. And that's the green light to place a call.
There's the opposite end of that. So let's say somebody pings you and you don't get back to them. That other person's going to start wondering, because that happened to me a lot in particular, where it's like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I don't hear back for an extended period of time. And you see this person interacting online. It's like, do I smell? Is this something with me? What's going on here? So yeah. I think it's incumbent to acknowledge the message, but it's not at all obligatory to submit to whatever it is they're asking. Hey, can I call you right now? No, you can't. Hey, because you can deflect that like a goalie. You can play goalie and be like, no, but go ahead and see if there's something on our calendars, if you need to really get together. And if they need, I need this thing right now. I'm sorry. I'm weighing that, it should be implied that, yes, I'm weighing all this and I still have to say no, because maybe you're already in a meeting. Maybe you're 9 steps through the testing phase and you just can't be bothered right now because it's all in your head right now. And one more step. No, go away. So I don't think it's unreasonable. And to be fair, most of the time, every time I ping somebody, I feel like, oh my gosh, I could have just broke somebody's concentration. And that, is crappy,
Yeah, I do feel bad about that sometimes. I don't know. I mean, when this whole thing started, I was in the middle of writing some of the most challenging code that I've written professionally. And I painted myself into a corner 3 times, basically, and I blame it 100% on context switching.
So at jobs, context switching is a known phrase, I would think, in our industry. And it's good that people are aware, that it's difficult. It's why we can only do so much. I had an argument with somebody not that long ago. not really an argument, but humans
Discussion.
can only do. Yes. Humans can only do one thing at a time. And somebody said, oh, that's not true. I can do a bunch of things at a time. I'm like, no. You can actually only do it once. You can multiplex, meaning you can do this thing, now switch and do this, now do this, but you can only ever do one thing at a time. And the more you multiplex, the more wires can get crossed and things like that. And a computer can only do a computer core can only do one thing at a time too. And that's why we have, multiple cores and stuff like that. That's truly doing multiple things at once because it's multiple instances. So, we all have our different philosophies of getting work done. Some people want to get the task done and then stop, answer calls, whatnot, go to the next task, get it done. That's nice and clean. That's probably not typical because we get bombarded all the time with, hey, this client called, they need this. Hey, this broke. You're going to need to drop everything. That's reality. And you as a person, me as actually all of us, we have to triage. What is it that you want? Is it this important that I need to pay the tax of context switching right now? We have to make those decisions quick. And we, I think it's a cultural thing. You got to set that boundary. Your words, good word. I would love to, but I have to be a little bit selfish right now and finish the task I'm working on, so that I can also help you. And yes, I realize that it blocks you, but that's where I need you to multiplex on your next task while you wait, or whatever that is.
So what do you think, or do you think that some of this eagerness to turn everything into a video call, where before it was scheduled meetings, a group of people would come into a room, you kind of almost had to check calendars to make sure that could happen. Do you think some of that is contributing to longer hours being clocked during this new work from home era?
For me and my view of the universe, it has not changed anything.
Well, see, I think when we get to the wrap up of this segment, we're for sure going to recount some of the ways that you establish those boundaries, because it sounds like you've not just from this part of the pandemic work from home, but it sounds like you've really established good boundary setting, like period, as a work from home person. I haven't really clocked up my hours either, but I've witnessed a lot of my peers being way more accessible around regular office hours. And I do think it's because I was on 6, freaking Teams meetings today. I have to get my work done. So therefore it's happening between 6 and 8 o'clock at night.
So at risk of pointing fingers at anyone's work or anything, my personal philosophy is like the game Mario Brothers. Stay with me for a second.
Oh, I'm intrigued now.
So Mario Brothers, you jump around and you got little Koopa Troopa Goombas walking around, fireballs, all the whole 9 yards. You got, bottomless pits, and eventually you'll get to the end, but you're only rewarded by another level. So what I call safe spots in programming. So as you're going through a level of Mario Brothers, you get to a spot where nothing can hit you. You're at a safe spot. I call that
hide behind a pipe.
Yes. At this point, it's probably hopefully Friday or it's 5 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's time to go home because we're at a safe spot. But knowing full well when I come back to work the next day, I'm back in peril, right? I'm jumping, I'm dodging fireballs, whatnot. So my goal here is to, while I'm in peril, so while I'm working on a thing, my attention needs to be on the thing. When I get to a safe spot, I could then say, okay, let me check my cell phone. Let me check my Slack. Let me do whatever. So my suggestion is while you're in peril, while Mario is jumping around, ducking and dodging, turtle shells and whatnot. Bob, you're Mario, by the way, if you haven't figured it out. Those things like Zoom or Teams, whatnot, should just not exist in your world. Mario doesn't have access to those things, ideally. Yeah. And so when you get to that safe place, whether you're at the end of the level and you can slide the Jira ticket to the right, or you're just halfway through the map and you're like, okay, I'm not done, but at least right now I'm to a stopping point. I can like stage these files, commit where I'm at, work in progress. And then I can say, okay, what is it that you want to do? And then as soon as you decide, okay, It's time to advance through the level. I'm in peril. Shut the world out. And the only thing I need to be worried about is how much time between now and the next scheduled meeting. That's how much time I have to be in peril and get to the next safe spot.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I think the nature of my hybrid role really adds some additional fireballs and turtles for sure.
I'm just going to keep throwing the analogies out there. Another thing I like to say is programmers are all about managing complexity. So we have all these things in code. The thing has to do this. And over time, we don't usually get less code. We get more code. And as the code grows, it's working great and it hits critical mass. Now we got to reorg and do all these things. So it's all about managing complexity in code. We should also manage this complexity of our daily schedule. What does our schedule look like? Are we too meeting heavy? How do we kill that off? How do we say, sorry? I know a lot of people who just go to their calendar and just block off time.
Yeah. Done. And I can't be that guy. I know folks that do that, and it's probably a very effective tool. And it's probably 90+% honesty, but some of it I think is just to make sure that they're always in a safe space or always able to dodge. Really, it's probably so they're always able to dodge, turtles and fireballs. But
yeah, I don't know what the answer is because obviously it's different for everyone. But if you can. I feel like the doctor is in.
Well, you're doing a great job with this. I mean, I think that I want you to summarize your key takeaways here. I would just
say, you have a work-life balance, I hope, we all strive for that, but we should also have that's a mix that represents a ratio of work to life. We should also take each individual day and go, well, what's my meeting to productivity ratio? And keep that in balance because, when I hear I had 6 Zoom or team meetings today, I can already tell you, oh, well, your balance is out of whack there. How do you fix it? I don't know, but that's the problem that needs solved.
I can't wait to get back to you like 6-10 weeks from now when you start having to
help
guide some junior devs and be available to them at a moment's beck and call.
Well, I don't know. I feel like when you're in the programming work week, it's like you're on a Navy ship. You know what? We're all on the ship together.
It's the analogy episode of Bob and Kevin.
It is. Well, it's funny because anyone who's ever actually worked with me in stand-ups, every stand-up I have some off the wall analogy, and I'm the analogy guy.
This is like when your nose is really stuffed up, and
I feel like this is a Family Guy. Oh yeah, that was like the time that was and then go into a flashback scene here of when Peter is doing something ridiculous. Anyway, so imagine being on a Navy ship. I mean, you're all on the ship together. You can't all go to the captain and say, "Captain, I need this. Captain, I need this." You have to have that chain of command, and you have to say, you know what? You also have to have rules like this. What, question number one out of me, if somebody asks me a question, what have you tried? And if the answer is nothing, I say, all right.
Hang up, call me back.
Well, so because there's like a sweet spot. If you come to me right away, that's a problem. If you come to me too late, that's a problem. So something on the order of, I don't know, spend 15 to 30 minutes, with your intuition, with your Googles. And then if you hit an hour and you haven't advanced to the next level, Mario hasn't made it to the flag at the end. Now you need to ask for help. Because so there's a kind of a gray period where you need to not bother anyone else only because you need to help yourself. We hired you to help the team, not to just say, hey, how did we do this, Bob? Bob, hey, can you tell me the answer, Bob? Hey, can you do my homework for me, Bob? And I'm not picking on you or where you work. I'm just saying there comes a point where you can be like, okay, whoa. You need to learn and grow, a bit on your own here for everyone's benefit. And then you also need to not take a day to go, well, I've been, you never want to hear, I've been working on this for a day now and I just can't figure it out. It's like, whoa, okay, hold on. Now that's just weird. Don't be that person either. So
let's look at this typo in that variable name first and see if that fixes it.
So it's actually encouraged to ask for help, but it's encouraged to not ask for help right away. You know, if that makes sense.
There's like going to give me Zoom fatigue.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, great, Kevin. This is such a perfect world. I'm glad it all works out great for you always, every day. Well, it doesn't, but I'm just saying, you know, I'm a very much a self-motivated person, and I believe in the philosophy of, I've had a lot of philosophies in this episode, the philosophy of if we've probably solved every single computer science problem ever already. It's a matter of you as a developer discovering or understanding what the actual problem is and discovering the answer. It exists. We're not actually creating like this new concept. You as junior or senior dev aren't going, you know what? This is the first time somebody had to validate a form. But you know what? I'm up for it. This guy right here. It's like, well, come on. This has been done a zillion times and there's a zillion solutions for it. Pick one and go with it.
All right. So the net is unless Kevin really likes you, don't call him.
Whatever. No, I like talking to people and whatnot, you know, but that's, you know, you just have to balance. It's just a balance, you know.
Yes. No. And I think that's, I mean, you mentioned in a perfect world or so great that it's so perfect for you. I know obviously everyone knows it's not, but that's how you set up boundaries and guardrails. The guardrails and the boundaries are for ideal situations. Yes, there's always exceptions, but you still want to set those boundaries based on what the ideal work environment is for you, what works best for you, and obviously for your employer. But, you know, it's a give and take, but you got to set them, because if you don't, you're going to probably suffer from massive amounts of Zoom fatigue as it relates to the topic of the show. Do you have anything else you want?
Yeah, one last thing. In the military, we had this term called force multiplier. So you become a force multiplier if you can, and we'll go the standard Jesus parable here or whatever it is. I don't want to give you a fish because you're just going to keep coming back to me for fish. I need to teach you how to fish. Now, I know you're not going to fish right away, but at some point I need you to be able to fish so you can do what? You can also fish for yourself and teach somebody else to fish. So at the end of the day,
that's the force multiplier.
Yeah, we are becoming a force to be reckoned with because we are all skilled at what we're doing over and over, and we keep growing our force. So the goal is, you know, that you're just not the well of information. While it may be great for ego, for all of us to be like, I had this answer. What you really want is to teach your students to become teachers themselves. And that is the true mark of a good mentor and leader, to be like, you know what? I can't really teach you much anymore because I think you're rivaling what I know, and if not gone beyond, you know?
Snatch this pearl from my hand.
So, I mean,
Kung Fu reference for anyone who's
ideally, that's the kind of people I want to work with, and people who be like, I need you to help mentor me so I can become like you, if not better. That's the kind of person I want to work with.
Okay. Nothing to do with Zoom fatigue, but tangentially connected.
Oh yeah. Zoom fatigue sucks. All right. There you go.
All right. So you want to entertain what was behind door number 1 for a few minutes here today?
Hey, Bob, what was behind door number 1?
Well, let me start with a question. Kevin, are you familiar with a far-right conspiracy theory alleging that a cabal of Satan-worshipping pedophiles is running the global child sex trafficking ring and is plotting against President Donald Trump, who is battling them?
No, but I bet you there's a group who's keeping all that in check for us, right, Bob?
That group is QAnon.
Not Quanon?
Or not Quanon, it's QAnon. And actually, QAnon is not the first in the line of Anon organizations, using scare quotes for organizations. It's actually part of a long list from anonymous 4chan posters such as FBI Anon, HLI Anon, High Level Insider, and CIA Anon, and WH Insider Anon. So there's a long, rich history of these high-level, all-knowing Qs that help share, also in scare quotes, important information with members of society that are based in conspiracy.
So I've heard of QAnon and I've seen the things online. And I'm just shaking my head. But what I really shake my head at is I think humans, by their very nature, are totally into conspiracy theory. Like, they're just like, man, they just want to be validated. And conspiracy theorists comes along and go, you know, they're doing sex trafficking in the basement of this pizza joint. I knew it. You know, they burnt my pizza, but I knew they were doing more. It was sex trafficking. I knew it all along. It's just like, what is going on with people? What is going on?
Spoiler alert, the pizza place didn't even have a basement, just for the record.
Yeah, so Bob, a few episodes ago, or maybe last, I don't know, in the recent archives, you had mentioned that there's something called Pizzagate, and that's where a group like this, maybe this group, suggested.
No, actually, I think Pizzagate was one of the original QAnon leaked conspiracies. Pizzagate.
Let me ask you, Bob. I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you just to get on record. If I come to you and be like, Bob, hey, don't tell anyone, but there's this pizza joint, and I know you've never heard of it, and it's in a far place from where you actually live, but you know what? Here's what they're doing. Blah, blah, blah. Do you just believe me?
Well, I would ask you if you saw it on the internet. And then when you said yes, I would say, of course I believe you.
I've been finding
everything on the internet is true, right?
Well, like recently, President Trump had said, aha, the Democrats didn't say under God. They removed it from their Pledge of Allegiance. And he tweeted that. And that becomes public record. And of course, people are like, no, that's not what happened. Here's the 4 nights and here's the thing. And then, of course, it comes out, well, the caucuses, they're the ones that didn't say it. But I know, but your tweet doesn't qualify any of that. In fact, it implies the opposite.
Pretty sure that I read it was happening in caucuses where they did not want to single out any specific religious belief because there was a multitude of religious beliefs formed in that caucus.
Whatever the reasoning is, and I go to church, full disclosure, I go to church every Sunday. I look at that and go, come on. Did that really happen? And, you know, that was my gut reaction. Come on now. Did that really happen? And of course, it didn't take long to do a few Googles. And of course, people on Twitter, you know, oh, how about this? How about this? But people, I think, just want to believe that there's some shadowy force out there working against you, the deep state, right? Why?
Well, yeah, no, totally. The deep state is right in there with it.
People, y'all need a hobby. I do woodworking and play guitar. I don't sit around on chat channels and go, hey, did y'all hear about this pizza joint? I think we need to take care of it.
Kevin, you're just not very Q woke. That's the problem.
Yes. But the scary part is these QAnon people, I guess I'll use the word infiltrated some fairly high level people, right? That famous people.
We have recently elected U.S. government officials who I think we're up to 3 Senate seats or something like that, where they are on the record as believing QAnon theories, because the premise of Q is that Q is a high level security clearance ranked individual. Like that's the whole concept the aliens,
of Q. Bob.
Well, and that was something I was going to ask you too, because we're kind of like shitting on conspiracy theories, but you and I are very borderline on believing some conspiracy theories as it relates to aliens and alien technology.
Okay.
Right.
That's fair. But I think if we go back to episode 42, do you like the episode drop there?
Nice.
If you go back to episode 42, which we're at 75 or 76, I don't know. We're at 70 something right now.
This is 77 today.
Okay. I think you'll find that we were pretty skeptical, and we definitely disclaiming, say, hey, you know, I don't know, but it's hard not. Of course, it's all innuendo, and the thing that really pushes conspiracy theory is the fact that you can't disprove it or prove it. It's in that purgatory.
Well, maybe some. This QAnon stuff seems pretty cut and dry.
Well, I'm asked all the time by my kids, how do you know, Dad? And I go, well, that's a good question, because we'll say something like, dinosaurs, blah 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 blah. Well, how do you know they existed back then, Dad? Well, Yeah, you're right. I wasn't there. So I have to be able to subscribe to science. Yeah, science. So science has a reputation. But how do you know that they're right, Dad? You just you start questioning, oh my gosh, they're right. It's kind of like we're just being arbitrary what we believe in based on what we want to believe. And I think that primal thought process is kind of why people believe the earth is flat in some cases. I'm like, what is going on? Well, have you ever been to space, Bob? How about you, Kevin? Then how do you know? Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to know, but
well, I'm going to posit a different reason for how that happens to people. And I'm sure a casual listener who's made it 50 minutes into the episode is wondering, hey, I clicked on a tech podcast. Why are they talking about conspiracy theories? Well, I'm going to posit that the reason why flat earth, QAnon conspiracies, pretty much any conspiracy, is because social media is complicit in creating bubbles where people just parrot the same information to each other, and they create we had an episode about this too, the different types of beliefs, right? The 3 different kinds. Of course, yep. I'm not remembering them off the top of my head.
Personal truth, political truth, and objective truths. Are we talking about that?
Yes, that episode. So I think that these bubbles like Facebook and Twitter, where basically QAnon thrived and grew like a fire out of control to get us to where we are 3.5 years later, it's because Facebook. I mean, I joked a couple episodes ago, Facebook's got a group for everything. Well, guess what? They actually had a bunch of groups for QAnon. And recently, they said that Twitter and Facebook both said that they purged a bunch of QAnon groups and have been enforcing some of their guidelines, but only when it relates to discussion of violence and other types of like personal acts of violence related to their beliefs. But I did a quick search on Facebook today. There are so many individuals who have labeled themselves with the QAnon label, and all they're just like giant retweets, but whatever it is on Facebook, like just shares of graphic memes that just support all these wackadoodle conspiracies.
So do you think it's like a basic human psychology condition that or even sociology, they want to be a part of a group? Confirmation bias, no matter, even if you're aware of confirmation bias, you're fairly susceptible to it. And then that people kind of just want to believe what they want to believe because, when you look out into this universe from your 2 eyeballs, you are the center of a universe. Sorry, I've got a noisy kid. So do you understand what I'm saying there? Well, it's just like people are just giving into some of their primal instincts as humans to go, yeah, that makes sense. And, there's a little piece of confirmation bias on the internet. I'm going to stop looking after that. And then, you know what? Yeah, I'm a smart person. That makes sense. Yeah, let's go with it. And then they start finding each other, and then they just kind of turn into this big glob of 100%, whatever.
100%. That goes for, that's positive and negative. I mean, people want to belong, and so they sign on to these things and they want to be popular with that new group they're part of. So what's one way to do that is take the messaging that group is, supporting and just yell it a little louder and bring a couple more people into the group. And all of a sudden, you're part of you're no longer at the bottom of the pyramid. You're climbing your way up by pushing people underneath you. So
if we go back to the aliens episode a little bit, I would look at it from our perspective. As people, how do you look at something? So oftentimes you'll see a ghost video or an aliens video, and a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, they're real. Oh, that's amazing. And then other people will look at it and go, let me be skeptical about this. So it's almost like, do you have the skeptical gene? Do you have the naivety gene? What is your personal process of figuring these things out? Because I really think you see a lot of people who are just like, oh, well, yeah, I saw that on the internet. It must be true. And then you have other people. I like to think I'm more resistant. I'm not saying I'm immune, but a lot of times I'll see something, I go, wait a second, that don't really smell, that passed the smell test. Let me corroborate this. And then, well, Kevin, what are you corroborating against? Your sources, your confirmation you're right. You're absolutely right. And really that kind of comes down to like my kids. Dad, how do you know? Well, you're right. I don't know for sure because I don't have direct evidence. So I have to take a leap of faith at some point and go, this is what I believe. And I think a lot of people are in the camp of, well, I believe we didn't go to the moon. I believe this pizza place and Wayfair are trafficking people.
Well, do you know what the seminal moment of the founding of Q was?
Enlighten me.
A 4chan post saying that Hillary was going to be arrested imminently. It never happened.
You mean imminently?
Yet, imminently, whatever. It was going to happen. Like, it was definitely going to happen. Imminent? No, imminent. But, yeah, and it never happened. But yet, the following came. I guess it's very similar to Flat Earth. Now that you say that. I say
actually,
that
you know what? It reminds me of people. The world's going to end on this day. And that day comes. And everyone's like, oh, well, it's because the world's really going to end on this date, some future date. And then it comes and goes again. It's just like, yeah, I'm not so sure about that.
But I definitely, we've talked about this 100 million times on the show throughout 77 episodes now, that, obviously Facebook and Twitter have to take some responsibility for the non-factual nature of some of these like uprisings, these groups. But it took them, it's too late now, right?
Well,
you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube.
When I turn on the TV and I see a 17-year-old running around with an AR-15 shooting people, and we have the police officers on tape saying, hey, thanks for helping us. Just prior to that, I really think there's some source, maybe many sources here, at least in America, that are definitely contributing in a mass way. And it's, what's different? I think it's social media for sure.
100%.
Hey, actually, I had a question coming into this episode I forgot to ask you. I'm going to ask you now. So a lot of people, and I've pondered this too, maybe I believe this, maybe I don't, say that, nothing is different with our society now than it was 20 years ago in terms of how we interact with each other. The only thing different is, yeah, I know that's a kind of a bold statement. The only thing different is your access to that information is more readily available because of the internet, meaning murders are the same. It feels like there may be more now or more whatever, pick something now, but it may be true that there's actually no more. You're just more aware of them. What do you think?
Technically, if you're taking that example in specific, I believe that those numbers are actually all down.
That doesn't help that argument because you're saying there's less all this stuff, yet it feels like there's 100% more.
Just
right?
as it relates to murders.
Okay.
Violent crime in particular. I think violent crime has been experiencing a downward trend. We'd have to fact check that. But anyway, regardless of the actual factual nature of it, I do think that there are current practices in place as it relates to our media consumption and our media production that can take a 1 and make it feel like it's a million.
Yes. Something that's happened to me in the last 2 weeks, I've been less tweeting, and actually I think it's helped a lot. So I'm infamously off Facebook. If you're a listener of the show, I'm barely on Instagram. I've been a lot on Twitter, but I'm finding a correlation that the less I'm on Twitter, even when I say puppies and kittens and hugs and hearts, the less I'm on there, the better, because it's really hard to scroll and not see just so much outrage and just internalize like all this.
Do you know that there's a term for that? It's called
PTSD.
Doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling. Oh man,
yes.
Every week there's like a new social media word that I've got to learn.
So yeah, I think interestingly enough, like the boundaries conversation we were having as it relates to Zoom fatigue, I think between the two of us, I probably have the better boundaries or behavioral boundaries when it comes to social media.
Probably.
I know for a fact that you explore hashtags. You explore the trending. I have never once clicked into any of those things.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah, I think the anecdotal evidence that I've amassed from my friends tells me that's a bad idea. So I've created a pretty good bubble on Twitter. Now on Facebook, that's a whole nother story, because people that you were quote unquote friends with in the real world 30 years ago, some of them are downright shitty ass people.
Yeah.
And I haven't really been good at blocking them. So yeah, I get a lot more crazy in my Facebook life than I do in my Twitter life, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely am trying to balance the old, well, Kevin, if you get off social media, that will be better for you, won't it? And then I also go, the other part of my conscience is going, well, Kevin, shouldn't you want to be informed on what's going on in your world? Shouldn't you be standing up for these atrocities? And I go, man.
And that's the rub, because you can't even say, all right, so you could subscribe to tech Twitter. I'm just going to be interested in the technological aspects, the people that are coders, developers, app purveyors, whatever. But even every single community is tainted with division, fear, all that kind of stuff. You can't even get a clean tech feed anymore.
Well, the classic thing. So Scott Hanselman gets every now and then, hey, Scott, enough of the political tweets. Blah, blah,
Shut
blah.
up and code.
Yeah, can you just talk about the good stuff? And then his standard reply is, hey, I'm a fully formed human being. I interact in an entire society, and I think that's a good answer. But some people want a very filtered, just show me puppies and kittens, please, because I don't want that. But I don't think we'll ever get to that from some brands. I mean, some brands play it safe. I don't see Wendy's talking about Black Lives Matter, the handle. I don't see some corporate, Nike would, but Wendy's probably wouldn't, and so it's really hard to figure out which brands are going to take that on. Personal people, heck, it's anonymous anyway. I'm not an anonymous account. I broadcast who I am, but you get a lot of the eggs or the
blue eggs
or the strange handle that's not a real name. And because you can be fairly anonymous on Twitter, where you're talking about on Facebook, you have to be the person behind the name, for sure. And that makes it even more awkward, because you're like, wow, Sally and Tim from high school, man, they're racist. How do I get away from
straight
them?
up racist? How
do I get out of there without, oh man, look at that. They're posting videos of shooting. Oh man, okay, if I unfollow them, it's not good. Maybe I can mute them. Yeah, that's it. Mute. Thank you, Facebook. I can mute. But you know what, Facebook, why don't you just help me out here and suppress some of this bullshit? But,
why don't you just ban those racists?
But they won't.
There's an idea.
Because shareholders and all that want what? Number of active users, and they want to play the, it's a free speech thing. Okay, whatever.
Well, I referenced tech Twitter, right? So one of the groupings that I've started to I've been collecting over the years, basically, is it's comedy Twitter. It's comedians, funny, happy-go-lucky people. I mean, probably a lot of them are disturbed, but actually, even Tom Clark, guest that we had on the show, right? Talked about the tech of comedy. That was probably episode 15 or something like that. But anyway, very jovial person. Jim Gaffigan. Are you familiar with Jim Gaffigan?
Yep. Oh yeah.
So, all these guys, all these comedians, Whitney Cummings too, all those different. But anyway, comedy Twitter has taken a very dark, outing of comics that seemed like great guys that turned out to be dirtballs and, part of the Me Too movement. And then, just recently, even Tom has gotten hyper political because this stuff is impacting us as individuals. And, you know, he can't even be happy, funny comedian guy. And Jim Gaffigan in the last 24 hours told some lady to fuck off.
LeBron James did too.
Twitter. Yeah. LeBron James told everybody to fuck off. But, but Jim Gaffigan, who never swears in his routines, like basically got pushed to the edge of like snapping.
Well, imagine being an entertainer, an athlete, something like this, where, hey, we're in a pandemic. You know, part of their thought process has to be, okay, we have to shut things down for the right, you know, do it right. But when you see it shut down half-ass, and the man at the top totally has a 1,000-person acceptance speech in his front yard, you know, doesn't follow any of the guidelines, and then he tells the CDC, or I back up, I don't know that. The CDC suddenly says, oh, we don't need to test people who don't have symptoms.
Guidance from the top, I think it was referred to as.
Yeah. So if I'm a comedian or something like that, I'm pretty upset because I'm looking at this going, you know what? To getting back to normal is going to take so much longer. And that's affecting me both personally, professionally, everything. It's in fact, Jim Gaffigan might be okay. But you know what? That up and coming comedian or that up and coming, I don't know, videographer that I have in my family who can't go to sports events, you know, it affects us. And I would be really frustrated too. It's like, okay, are we taking this serious? Are we not taking this serious? I'm confused. Anyway.
And social media is not helping. And the media is not helping.
Yeah. I never saw it coming. I mean, George Bush might have had a Twitter. Probably not. He does now. Barack Obama had a Twitter while he was president, but used it for like, you know, a few things. We have a sitting president who does public policy and whatnot on a social media platform. Holy shit, Batman. What happened?
I don't know.
Do you follow President Trump on Twitter? I do. I just want to hear what the you know, right before the world ends, I want to know what the last tweet was. So yeah, that's usually what I want to know. But do you follow him on Facebook? Can you follow like his group or whatnot? Is that a thing?
I don't know if he's actually, I mean, I'm sure the White House has a page. I'm sure the Donald Trump campaign has a page. I'm getting bombarded with ads lately. I mean, I know that they're advertising.
Joe Biden will destroy America. Right.
Oh, I'm sure they collected a bunch of footage this past week from the RNC. So I'm sure the ads will even clock up even more. All right. So I want to kind of bring this back and wrap it up since we're at the $1.06 mark right now. I think one of the big themes from today's episode, boundaries. We talked about it as it relates to Zoom fatigue and just good work from home, work-life balance. Kevin definitely had some good advice and tips on that. And QAnon really wasn't a QAnon conversation. It's just more of our piling on to the way social media and media have been handling events. But we also discussed that boundaries are probably important there. Be careful which hashtags you research and get sucked down the rabbit hole. And don't search QAnon on Facebook because that is also a rabbit hole. What else you got?
So just to double down on all that. So I'm a firm believer of you're in charge of your own happiness when it comes to things. So Zoom fatigue, if it's not working for you, make a change. I'm all about taking initiative. Don't wait for the world to change. You might just have to be the one that changes it, even though it may be difficult. And then QAnon, I think they're just yet another example of how people just want to believe what they want to believe. And that's on all sides. But the thing with QAnon is it's, I don't know, is it the new KKK? Is it the new shadow organization that's influencing politicians? I guess, future will reveal that. And then as we get closer to November, holy crap, it's going to feel like forever. All right, back to you, Bob.
Oh, I saw that tweet earlier today that if you think it's felt like forever since March when the pandemic kind of kicked into full gear, yeah, this is going to be a long 3 months for sure. But hey, rest assured, you can always listen to the Bob and Kevin Show every week. We're going to try to launch on
we've got
release.
fun packs, which I'm totally inventing. We don't have signature tinfoil hats yet, because I think at one point we talked about like, what's our thing,
Yes.
tinfoil hats, but we actually don't have any of those. So, but you can make one at home if you want. I can send you a PDF on how to make one. But if you'd rather have something more tangible, get a hold of us. I can get you a coaster, a sticker, a magnet, maybe all three if you're really nice enough. Right.
We should tweet out that PDF on how to make a tinfoil hat. I bet you get lots of traction with that.
Yeah. I think,
all right, everyone.
One last thing. Kyle, friend of the show, I believe he mentioned that we should rename the podcast one day to the Tinfoil Hat Brigade. I don't think we're going to do that. That was a while ago,
right?
Yeah, that was a while ago. I don't think but I think we need to start like coming up with like nicknames for our listeners, like Tin Hatters or something like that. So think about it. If you've got a suggestion, let us know.
I want you all to be known as loyal fans. How's that?
I think our listeners are just, gluttons for punishment. So yours is more catchy.
All right, everyone. Have a great week. We'll be back at you next time. See ya.
Bye.
Hey, have you ever wondered how you can get in touch with us at the Bob and Kevin Show?
Well, first, you can try us via email at comments@bobandkevinshow.com.
Or are you more into social? If so, you can find us on Twitter at Bob and Kevin Show.
Or on Instagram as Bob Kevin Show.
That's Bob, the letter N, Kevin Show.
And if you're still on Facebook, you can even find us at facebook.com/Bob and Kevin Show.
And for the serious business fans, you can even find us on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/company/the-Bob-Kevin-Show.
How's that for a handle? Let's connect.